Okay, cool. Recording's working now as well. So I just had to. Something happened with OBS where yeah, just turn it off and on again, and it worked. Okay, so Citizen Gone 2952. This is the underground bunker panel. So let's watch that. We're gonna watch back as many of the panels as possible because I watched it live, and sometimes you miss things and all that. So let's see what we got here.
Hello, I'm Ian Leyland. I'm the art director for Star Citizen, and today we're going to talk about underground facilities. Now, this was a presentation that we gave Chris internally a little while back, and what we're going to cover is how we're going to take one of the locations we have in the game right now, but actually really design it from the ground up to be the location archetype that we really wanted. Okay, let's get started.
So this one's really big. I think out of everything, this I found to be the coolest.
Let's talk about the original underground facilities. Now, the problem was we made these originally for the CitizenCon presentation demo, and the time we had wasn't enough to kind of take the location where we wanted it to be. Now, it kind of fit.
What's funny about that is they've had literal years to revamp these and do better, and they just never did. So that's a weird part of this.
It's the current purpose. It's fairly small in scale. It gives a multi-room layout opportunity for FPS combat, but we always knew we wanted it to be able to scale, you know, small, medium, large, to accommodate maybe 60 minutes of gameplay time per location.
That's a lot.
So how do we go about designing a location archetype from the ground up? So what we do is we split the location into the core areas we want to visually develop. Now, for underground facilities, the first thing we're looking at here is...
And my initial, I was disappointed before this and somewhat disappointed during this, is it's all just visual stuff. It's not a representation necessarily of what the gameplay designers will do with this and how they'll enhance it and make it as good as possible. It was just the visual tools that gameplay designers and level designers and things like that will eventually build upon.
Is what we're calling Zone 1. So this is the presence on the landscape. So what we're looking at here...
When I saw this, I mean... Again, I would buy a print of this and put it on my wall. This is probably one of the coolest pictures I've seen. Just, they never even really mention it, but having a hangar at a bunker is the biggest quality of life change to bunkers, period.
An example key art shot of what a medium-sized underground facility could look like. So dominant features that we're seeing here is a kind of a key spire. This is instantly where
there's roads,
you should be able to navigate towards. This could be like a corporate wing or an executive landing pad on the top. And then moving down is very important to be able to get the landing pads or the landing hangars quite close to the facility, because we wanted that experience as the player lands. They're not far off from the location, they're actually quite close, and you should be able to see a little FPS area where the player lands. Also, what we're seeing here is...
because I see somebody in chat saying hangars at bunkers. The reason that that's really important is because the current bunkers you land outside, say you have a crime stat and you're at a bunker, or say you don't, and somebody comes across and they just want to be a dick. They just blow up your ship, right? So they mentioned at the end of the show that your ship is the hero. Like, you're not necessarily the hero, your ship is. And if our hero is constantly getting destroyed every time we're out of our ship, it's not a good situation. So, yeah, having bunkers at these, I think, is a big quality of life update.
Some visual justification at what might actually be going on. So you're seeing, you know, processing and tanks and supplies actually on the landscape there. Now, what I was saying before about it being a kind of a much braver visual presence on a landscape, so we designed the silhouette primarily. So you'd be able to recognize these as a location to aim for. Also, what we're seeing here is we thought it'd be cool to actually have surface entrances as well. So we're actually thinking about primary, secondary, and tertiary ways for the player to get into these locations, depending on the mission scenario.
This is a big deal too.
Before, you've got like executive pads at the top, you've got the main hangars in the middle, and surface entrances down there below.
Right, multiple entrances, all covered.
After the players landed through the hangars, to be brought up into the main corporate reception. Now these are going to be quite interesting because we'll be able to rebrand these depending on the manufacturer or the location. That's where we'll get a lot of the variety. But this is the corporate presence before the player would go down into the bowels of the facility. And what we're seeing here is, you know, just an example of what a bearing reception could feel like.
Very cool.
Now moving into zone 2, with it being an underground facility, the physical act of going underground, that's cool.
What would actually be sick is like, hey, we got a problem down in the facility, but if you can't really go through the lobby with like armor and guns and stuff necessarily, maybe you have to take a different route.
Cool, right? So we wanted zone 2 to be about the logistics of the player going up and down and how we can make that cool visually, but also interesting from a player experience. So this is the transit, the elevator network. So we played around with a few different ideas into this, and one of the things
the
that
crane
we thought could be quite
mule
is the elevator itself could be a mini play space. So what we're looking at here is control room idea quite early. What sort of scale vehicles there could be. Now ultimately we didn't go with this idea. It didn't really fit the art style that we wanted. But it had some pretty interesting ideas. So what we landed on here is something that we felt quite comfortable with internally. Now it's worth noting we're designing these as an archetype first in a utilitarian art style.
Okay.
In the future we'll expand out and do other art style variants.
You'll
so what
see
we're seeing here is the control room overlooking the main warehouse floor, and then this elevator should be big and clear enough for the player to understand, like that's where logistics will go up and down. And for the elevator itself, we wanted it to be its own play space. So on the top level, that's where containers will be shipped up and down. But maybe underneath it, there could be little nooks and crannies. If we wanted to stealth into the location, we'd be able to give opportunities for the player there. And down below, this is what the player would kind of see. So now they're really starting to get into the bowels of the facility. So echoing of that control room down below, but also this is where we'll present the player with an opportunity to choose the area they want to go. Maybe cargo's to the left, maybe processing to the right, or maybe technicals up above.
Again, you notice how visual it is, and the player maybe would get to choose this or maybe get to choose that. There's so much up in the air of how much access we would have to these things and what we could possibly do there, because again, these are all just like, let's make it look cool first and I guess inspire the devs. So there you go. You can kind of see for sure that this is probably some sort of a crane, maybe refueling because of the tubes, but yeah, hard to say.
Part of that process of how we design is we look at things
that's what this
from
is,
the player's point of view.
you know?
So what we're seeing here is
function following form, the Star Citizen way.
Exfiltrate from the location. So a lot of the lines are leading towards the elevator because we want navigation to be as intuitive as possible. Moving on to zone 3, so this is the bowels of the facility. So these are going to be spaces that we've never really explored before. A lot of the locations in the game tend to be quite residential, but here we're going for something completely industrial. As a player,
this stuff
you
looks
want to feel like
sick.
An ant almost to the location. The primary purpose is not for you to be walking around, so we dedicated spaces towards logistics, and we put kind of personnel walkways almost as a secondary element. So in this image, you're kind of seeing where,
like, what I see here more than anything is if these are in the player's hands, it would be incredibly interesting. But if we're just going down and shooting at NPCs, you know, like kind of what we have now, okay, you up the structure, you made it very big and all these cool places, right? Great job. You know, CIG does a wonderful job at their locations, right? They always look cool, awesome. But the way the player engages it is probably the most important, and it's still very hard to say how much interactions we'll have with these things. As a player who would love to own stuff, you know, all these processing and mining and these sections would be very interesting, right? To have ownership of yourself. Like, essentially what you see is a massive org base, right? But yeah, it does remind me of the Rust Underground rail tunnels as well. This one especially,
You know,
right?
big trucks could kind of go, but we've also got like little nooks and crannies for the player to kind of explore and go into. Now, as it being a location dedicated towards the moving of logistics, we wanted to explore and have fun with vehicles, right? So here we're seeing the mule kind of coming and going on
Right,
one
it's
of these
dedicated to
walkways.
logistics.
You know, maybe there's elevators. So on the right, what we're
NPCs
seeing
or
is
us.
a ladder.
I look forward to finding
with
out.
all of these play spaces, as we were having fun and visually exploring, we always kept in mind of different ways for the player to traverse through the scene. Also, as part of that, we wanted to think about verticality, so not just a linear direction of traversal, but also ways in which we could go vertically. So maybe there's the concept of a cargo elevator within the corridor. So kind of similar to how you'd see on a character be a little control room looking at the flight deck.
It'd be cool if
you could
orgs
kinda
combine
see
these
something very
locations.
similar.
Yeah.
Maybe this ties into gameplay puzzles about how you could bring cargo in and out. You know, maybe as a player you're trying to steal some cargo out. There's tons of potential for how we could do puzzles in that regard. So looking at this image, we took loads of inspiration from modern day aircraft carriers about how you see pads on the flight deck go to the underbelly. We thought this would already give tons of opportunity for not only cool visuals, but also ways in which you can reveal extra traversal opportunities.
Just
So as
thinking
that
the amount of
cargo deck
elevators
goes
is
down,
problematic.
you see other ways to kind of traverse through into the facility. Okay, so what we're looking at here is kind of an example corridor. Now, corridors in our game are quite important to us, but they don't necessarily have to be boring. Now, what we're seeing here is an establishment of a radial motif. Now, with this being subterranean, we wanted to always imply that there's a weight kind of pushing down. So this radial motif is the best load bearing. So as a design language, instantly was feeling quite right. So in this traversal corridor, what we're seeing is a few different things. Clearly, there's a clear route for logistics. That's cool. But also on top of that, you've got these side routes, which is where personnel would go, split hierarchy. So it would be pretty cool for FPS combat, you know, for opportunities there. And then leading in, underneath, you're kind of seeing a tertiary route. Now, part of this could be this maybe is stealth route, or maybe this is the upper area is blocked off, so the player has to go down below. So even within something as a concept
like this
of a
panel less.
corridor, we want
Watching
to
it the
design
second
many
time.
different avenues for the player to traverse. Okay, so what we're looking at here is the underbelly of that concept we just showed. So up above, dedicated towards logistics, maybe containers going through, shipping containers going through. But underneath here, maybe this is just more towards the processing of it. Maybe hydraulic cylinders for these elevators coming and going. Hierarchically, it's a different mood. So up above, it's cleaner, it's noisier, but down below, darker, more steamy. And again, that presents other opportunities for gameplay. Now, we can't have these corridors going on forever. Performance-wise, we'd never be able to draw it, and it wouldn't be the most entertaining for the player. So we came up with the idea of introducing these bulkheads. So these bulkheads are almost checkpoints. So it enables us to break that draw distance, but it also enables us to break the rhythm of traversal. So from going from a corridor into an ops room or something like that, that's a way in which to kind of checkpoint the progress through the location. So inside these bulkheads, we could maybe array like ops rooms. Maybe these are scanning checkpoints to kind of monitor the movement of cargo to and from. Also inside here, there could be tea rooms or break rooms or offices. So again, we're trying to break the rhythm of traversal, so the player's going from a large space to a small space, but also from one theme to another theme.
Again, the more they show this stuff, the more it feels like this needs to be player owned, right? It feels like a ship. It does, right? Like, don't you get the vibe that this is a big ship with, this is the mess hall where you hang out? And this is the place where you create stuff, and this is the place where you do this, where not where NPCs are doing it. What's the point of doing all this work if you just walk around and watch NPCs having all the fun? That's the vibe that I'm getting. And I don't believe that we're anywhere near there yet. And that's where I'm getting the, like, more and more annoyed by the fact that this panel even was a thing. This is when I was like, yeah, this is not the road to 4.0. This is the road to 4.17 on this. Just remember, guys, we have 3.17. Okay? Like, none of this stuff has to come anytime soon. And this won't.
Create a really good rhythm of play space where the player's not getting bored of traversing through the space. So what we're seeing here is a side view to kind of explain how that process. So on the left, we've come in from the corridor. So on the top, we're seeing the primary route through, and we're seeing the bottom route coming in as well. So this is how, again, we're going to try and keep.
Yeah, so we made this cool location, and now we're trying to figure out why we made it. Yep.
In mind. Now going from a large corridor set to what we're considering here medium or small. So these are the tertiary networks that will link into the primary traversal route. So these again will be continuing the radial
motif. The Banu Merchantman is an active development
and these
PC.
would take the player and connect into the main spaces. Now from traversal networks to theme rooms. Now as the player is traversing through, we wanted to chapter that experience with key theme rooms. Now what we're seeing here is an example of an industrial space. Maybe it's processing. We didn't want to go too specific.
This was my favorite spot.
In the early development process, we wanted to explore motifs that could work. So here we're seeing an example, processing room, but there's a few key things that's kind of cool. So right from the bottom level, there's a network of levels which will be dedicated towards processing, pipes, machinery, all of that sort of good stuff. And then as we get higher up, we're seeing that very dominant kind of technical control wing suspended over the play space. As an idea, this creates a plethora of interesting opportunities as a play space.
More opportunities,
to
yes.
fight the way through or solve puzzles. One of the things early on we wanted is cause and effect. We wanted the player to be interacting, solving puzzles, but seeing that reflect into the space.
What does he even mean by that?
Another theme room idea we came up with was processing. So bringing in raw materials, processing them through, ready for manufacturing. So we had a bit of fun with ways in which we could kind of create these quite interesting set pieces. So it's not all just industry in the underbelly of these underground facilities. There's also going to be technical areas, areas dedicated towards the control of the location. So what we're seeing here is maybe it's the main map room. So this is where they control the networking.
I just see this as, your classic Star Citizen, just room after room after room of unusable waste of space.
Of everything.
At the moment.
And also on here,
this was like one of my favorite panels yesterday. And the more I watch it, the more I'm being brought back to reality of what this actually is. Like, you're not going to feel any ownership over this. You're going to just be cruising through most of these things. And yeah.
Got the overseeing executive suite. So it's not just technicians here, but also executive wings.
And also I was hyped about the hangar on the outside
first. If the player does get access to these executive wings, then we're seeing another type of art style in here as well. So we've seen industrial, we've seen technical. Now we'll be seeing, more like the corporate foyer we saw up above. So meeting rooms, office spaces, that sort of thing. And what we're seeing here is maybe there's the data processing of the location. So as a quick idea.
And to be fair, I'm sure I sound very negative about this. It's just from the history of things. Like we we have tons of amazing locations. The cities that we have are incredibly big, and not a single designer at this point has come along and said, you know what? Let's do this at Microtech. Let's do this at Lorville, right? There's plenty of traversal opportunities in those places, and nobody's really taken the opportunity to make it happen yet. And this, I just, with the focus on Squadron 42, with the level of design and gameplay elements that we have in the current game, I just don't see that being a thing very much at these bunkers. I would be ecstatic if this was a shift in direction, but it's more of a I'll believe it when I see it, and I will praise the absolute living fuck out of these if that is what happens. But at this moment, I'm not holding my breath for anything like that.
We thought these data racks are actually submerged for cooling in a base of water. We thought also it'd be cool if there's a cause and effect. So if the player solves a puzzle to go from it being below water to above water. So again, ways in which we can kind of spark ideas or conversations with design about interesting opportunities.
Like, why is art having conversations with design about interesting opportunities? Why isn't design having conversations with art? It sounds like it's always the other way around, dude.
It wouldn't
Fuck me.
It'd be a missed opportunity if we didn't go into some sort of organic locations as part of the underground facility. So this could be excavation zones or areas where it'd been abandoned. This could lead into cave networks. This was something we had quite a bit of fun with. So how do we actually take the player from being in this fairly well-established industrial location to a cave? There needs to be some form of transition period. So we came up with ideas about how we'd see excavation equipment,
caves connected,
with the roads kind of peter out. And as part of the roads, maybe we can do some pretty cool layouts for the player to drive through. Something that's a little bit more invested than just a straight line. Now, as part of that transition period between heavy industrial to exposed cave, the equipment needed to create further UGF spaces, maybe there's a large boring machine still there. Again, maybe that comes into some form of gameplay opportunity for the player to traverse over, interact.
Listen, the maybes and stuff isn't actually a bad thing. It means that, this location isn't set in stone looking the way it is. They're designing it with the opportunities for gameplay. That's the positive thing out here. What I'm being negative about is that I'm not sure anybody's going to take ownership of this and do something with it, The maybe part is
Correct.
Excuse me,
cool.
let me pause it. The maybe part is the artist saying, yeah, maybe we'll put this here, maybe we'll change it a little bit. So all that is fine. I don't find that to be a big deal at all. It's all this maybe in these opportunities is somebody going to make those a reality. And the history of Star Citizen says that at this time, somebody will make these locations a reality, but they'll never, not never, but for a length of time, they probably won't live up to their potential, right? The UGFs, I don't think have been, the current ones in game have even lived up to their potential yet.
Also, as
and they're
part
terrible.
of that, another opportunity to introduce a new element to the space could be, as we're transitioning towards more natural spaces,
and that just looks
we can
insane.
not only introduce different types of geology, but maybe we're introducing some form of liquid. So depending on the location, maybe it's on a certain planet, there could be like underground rivers, underground lakes, maybe it's lava, maybe it's acidic. And also if we're describing these locations as maybe some are more abandoned, we could start to showcase how nature slowly started to take over. This also would introduce some pretty cool opportunities. So also another process we do during concept development is I like to start taking some of these ideas we're developing and get them in the engine as soon as possible. And what this affords us is we can sit down with Todd and we can really evaluate how well an idea is working in terms of space, size, composition,
So they like this one.
opportunities right
I
from
like
the
this one
early
too. Look cool.
visual development process. And what we're looking at here is very loose concept meshes brought into the engine, quickly lit, just for that exploration process. That's an overview of what we're pushing for the new underground facilities. I'm quite excited about it, and hopefully you are soon. And we look forward to showing you more in the future.
Yeah, I definitely look forward to seeing more of what they do and how they do it in the future. It should be pretty exciting. It's just, I'm not looking forward to the artists talking about it anymore, you know? Like, does this not just have massive potential to be a huge org-owned, like, processing facility for, like, I don't know, ore and things to make stuff like that? It just feels like it's something we should own, not somebody else. It feels endgame. But we know it won't be. Music's so loud. Guys, the building blocks, though. I liked it. I like the way it looks. It just, again, it comes down to it's not all about the way it looks. For CIG it is, for us it's not, and we'll see. Yeah, I think at this point when I was watching it yesterday, I was a little bit loopy and tired and maybe not listening to him as much. And this time I really sat and listened, and I don't know. I just don't see it. Well, and I don't trust it. It just comes down to these are the spots where Star Citizen has not built up that trust for me yet, and but there's incredible opportunities to do that with things like this. So hopefully they do, and we'll have to see. I don't know what you guys think about it, but I am definitely on the fence with these underground bunkers being really, really exciting and stuff. I mean, we've had Siege, we've had underground bunkers, we've had derelict spaceships and a number of really cool locations, but the actual gameplay experience has been quite similar and quite leaving a lot to be desired up to this point. So we need the kind of the step up from outside the game or outside the art and outside these things. There's a lot of things that seemed to be working, people are working on, I guess, where the little pieces can start coming together and become like start to feel like an actual game, but it's all of that needs to happen for these things to matter. It's the same record playing over and over again. Like, where's the economic value of these things? What, like, all that processing, all that stuff. How does that play into Cargo Refactor, Tony Z's economy stuff, player engagement, all that stuff. So looks really cool. As always, Star Citizen's never not looked cool. It's what do we do with it and how do we interact with it is going to be the most important thing. And I don't know. I I've had some rebuilt confidence in the little things that they worked on for Squadron 42 and how that can impact Star Citizen and the way we interact with things and the way we move around the world and all that stuff. But that doesn't feel enough to make a location like this live up to the visuals that have been created so far.